AE. IPA, E. This digraph only appears in the interactive version of Space and doesn't anywhere in the show. It is formed when A and E stick together, and makes the longer sound. It can also make the I sound, as in Eon and Larvae. IPA, E. This digraph is mainly focused on in the episode Sail, Train and Name. It is formed when A and I stick together, and makes the longer sound. IPA, or. This trigraph is mainly focused on in the episode Fair. It is formed when A, I and R stick together. The trigraph by itself is also a word, which is acknowledged by the trigraph. AR. IPA, comma. This digraph is mainly focused on in the episode Card. It is formed when A and R stick together, and its sound is R's name pronunciation. Or. IPA, or. This digraph is mainly focused on in Outlaw. It is formed when A and U stick together, and it shares sounds with AW. AW. IPA, or. This digraph is mainly focused on in Outlaw. It is formed when A and W stick together, and it shares sounds with or. I. IPA, E. This digraph is mainly focused on in Name. It is formed when A and Y stick together. CCH. IPA, T. This digraph is mainly focused on in Char and Champ. It is formed when C and H stick together. It can also make the K sound as in Chris, and the sound as in Chic. CK. IPA, K. This digraph is mainly focused on in Key and Kick. It is formed when C and K stick together. DDD. IPA, D. This digraph appears at the beginning and end of odd. It is formed when two Ds stick together, and has the same sound as a lone DEA. IPA, I. This digraph is mainly focused on in Sleep. It is formed when E and A stick together, and it sounds like E's name. It can also make the E sound as in great, and the sound as in bread. IPA, or. This trigraph is mainly focused on in the episode Fair. It is formed when E, A and R stick together, and can make words like ear, here and near. Other common ear trigraph words are bear, pair, and where the sound this trigraph makes in them is pronounced comma like air, rather than comma, so although ear doesn't make that sound yet, it could still be a possibility. IPA, I. This digraph is mainly focused on in beep and sleep. It is formed when two E's stick together, and it sounds like E's name. IPA, or. This digraph is mainly focused on in fair. It is formed when E and R stick together. EW. IPA, Ju or U. This digraph is mainly focused in on blue, and only appears in this episode. It is formed when E and W stick together. EY. IPA, I. This digraph only appears in key, where K and the digraph spell the namesake object. It is formed when E and Y stick together, and it sounds like E's name. It can also make the E sound, as in hey. FFF. IPA, F. This digraph is mainly focused on in the episode Hill. It is formed when two F's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone FGGG. IPA. This digraph only appears in the episode Fair to spell bigger. GG also appears in E's episode in Alphablocks Word Magic, where E spells with them to spell egg. It is formed when two G's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone GIIE. IPA, or I. This digraph only appears in Mine. It is formed when I and E stick together, and it can make the long I sound. IE can also be used at the end of words where it makes the long E sound, as in peace, but the digraph in Alphablocks hasn't made that sound as of now. IPA, This trigraph is mainly focused on in Tightrope and Mine. It is formed when I, G and H stick together, and it can make the long I sound. It is the only trigraph to be shown in an interactive adaptation of an episode. IPA, or. This digraph only appears in Birthday Girl. It is formed when I and R stick together. LLL. IPA, L. This digraph is mainly focused on in the episode Hill. It is formed when two L's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone LNNG Ang. This digraph is mainly focused on in Song. It is formed when N and G stick together. There used to be a letter called Ang, representing its sound which is currently used in the IPA, NN. IPA, N. This digraph only appears in Fair where it spells thinner. It is formed when two N's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone NOOA. IPA, or O, some dialects. This digraph is mainly focused on in Toad and Home. It is formed when O and A stick together, and it can make the long O sound. They cannot speak other than their sound due to O being part of the digraph. However, A is still able to speak properly by herself while part of the digraph is seen in home, though it is probably so that A can still sing to the viewer in song about the digraph. Or IPA, or O. This trigraph only appears in UFO. It is formed when O, A and R stick together, and they cannot speak other than their sound due to O being part of the trigraph. They are one of the few trigraphs to spell solo to make a word. O, E, IPA, or O, some dialects. This digraph only appears in one episode and is mainly focused on in home. It is formed when O and E stick together, and it can make the long O sound. They cannot speak other than their sound due to O being part of the digraph. However, E is still able to speak properly by himself while part of the digraph is seen in home, though it is probably so that he can still sing to the viewer in song about the digraph. It can also make the I sound, as in photos. IPA. This digraph is mainly focused on in the end. It appears in cowboy as well, but it only shows up for a few seconds at the beginning. It is formed when O and I stick together, and it shares sounds with OY. They cannot speak other than their sound due to O being part of the digraph. IPA, U or. This digraph is mainly focused on in moon and book. It is formed when two O's stick together, and it makes two different sounds depending on the word. The digraph, like a single O, is only able to make their sounds, and they are able to alternate between their two sounds, and uses the right one during spellings. It is confirmed that OO making the wrong sound during spelling results in the word being nonsense, as shown when OO does the U sound while spelling foot instead of dart. Or IPA, or O. This digraph is mainly focused on in the end. It is formed when O and R stick together, and they cannot speak other than their sound due to O being part of the digraph. Or IPA, OW, or. This digraph only appears in Alphalympics, where D and the trigraph spell the word door. It is formed when two O's and an R stick together, and they likely cannot speak other than their sound due to two O's being part of the trigraph. OU. IPA. This digraph is mainly focused on in cowboy. It is formed when O and U stick together, and they cannot speak other than their sound due to O being part of the digraph. OU actually has two sounds, with the first being the one showcased in cowboy, with the other, less common one being shared with OO, EW and UE, though OU didn't make this sound in the show yet. It can also make the U sound, as in youth. OW. IPA. O, or. This digraph is mainly focused on in glow, how now, brown cow and cowboy. It is formed when O and W stick together, and they cannot speak other than their sounds due to O being part of the digraph. OW has two sounds, with the first being shared with OU, with the other one being the long O sound. OY. IPA. This digraph is mainly focused on in cowboy as well as appearing exclusively in the game adaptation of Jaybird. It is formed when O and Y stick together, and it shares sounds with OI. They cannot speak other than their sound due to O being part of the digraph. PPH. IPA, F. This digraph only appears in alphabet. This digraph appears on both versions of the Alphablocks logo. It is formed when P and H stick together, and has the same sound as FQQU. IPA, KW. This digraph appears in every episode that has both Q and U in them, and is infamous for that. It is formed when Q and U stick together, and it is explained that Q needs you to form this digraph so she can make her sound, much to U's dismay. SSH. IPA. This digraph is mainly focused on in cha-cha-cha and champ. It is formed when S and H stick together, and makes a sound similar to the sound of hushing. SSIPA, S. This digraph is mainly focused on in hill. It is formed when two S's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone STTH. IPA, Greek letter theta or letter F. This digraph is mainly focused on in cha-cha-cha and thing. It is formed when T and H stick together, and makes two similar sounds depending on the word being spelled. There used to be two letters in the Old English alphabet called thorn, letter thorn, and F, letter F, that used each of the sounds, but they were phased out in favor of the TH digraph. UUE. IPA, Ju or U. This digraph is mainly focused on in blue, and only appears in this episode. It is formed when U and E stick together. UR. IPA, or. This digraph is mainly focused on in the end. It is formed when U and R stick together. IPA, J, or comma. This trigraph only appears in fair. It is formed when U, R and D stick together.
Duże W.
WH, IPA, or W. This digraph only appears in alphabet. It is formed when W and H stick together, and has the same sound as a lone W. It can also have the same sound as a lone H, as in who.
ZZ, IPA, Z.
This digraph is mainly focused on in ZZ. It is formed when two Zs stick together, and has the same sound as a lone Z not in the show BB. IPA, B. This digraph would be formed when two Bs stick together, and has the same sound as a lone BGHIPA, F. Or, this digraph would be formed when G and H stick together, and could either have the same sound as F, G, or be silent. KN. IPA, N. This digraph would be formed when K and N stick together, and has the same sound as a lone NMB. IPA, M. This digraph would be formed when M and B stick together, and has the same sound as a lone MMMIPA, M. This digraph would be formed when two M's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone MPP. IPA, P. This digraph would be formed when two P's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone PRH. IPA. This digraph would be formed when R and H stick together, and has the same sound as a lone RRR. IPA. This digraph would be formed when two R's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone RTT. IPA, T. This digraph would be formed when two T's stick together, and has the same sound as a lone TUI. IPA, U. This digraph would be formed when U and I stick together, and has the same long sound as a lone UWR. IPA. This digraph would be formed when W and R stick together, and has the same sound as a lone RR. IPA, or comma. This trigraph could be formed when A, R and D stick together. By itself, the trigraph sounds the same as digraph AR, but when a consonant is added before it, it makes the same sound as trigraph air. It would make words like care, stare, or fanfare. IPA, or. This trigraph could be formed when two E's and an R stick together. It would make the same sound as trigraph ear and air. It could make words like deer, shear or steer. IPA, or. This trigraph could be formed when E, R and a second E stick together with R between both E's. It would have two sounds, with one being the same sound as trigraph seer and ear, and the other being the same sound as trigraph ser and R. It would make words such as here or there. IPA, or. This trigraph could be formed when I, R and D stick together. It would make words such as fire or tired. Or. IPA, or O. This trigraph could be formed when O, R and D stick together. It would make words such as store or more. IPA, ow, or comma. This trigraph could be formed when O, U and R stick together. It would make either the same sound as or AW or a sound that is a combination between the UOW and DRIRUR sounds. It would make words such as sour, flower and hour or tor, for and pour. Funnily enough, O, U and R actually spelled for together with F, though they didn't stick together.